Managing projects are never easy. Trying to balance your costs, time, resources, and everything in between can be daunting for some. Join Saria Gaylord, a certified project manager and founder of Orchestrating Your Success on Project Management for Entrepreneurs podcast, providing you practical project management tips and best practices to start, grow, and advance your business to improve your project outcomes. Now, here's your host, Saria Gaylord.
Well, welcome everyone to today's episode of Project Management for Entrepreneurs podcast. And today we're going to discuss how to conquer project scope changes in 8 easy steps. Now, there are always going to be some type of changes in your project. Now, those changes sometimes could be a major disruption. And then sometimes the changes could be just minor, or maybe the changes to the project could be no effect at all. So what I want to do today is to take you through 8 easy steps on how to conquer project scope changes so that you can take these steps and follow these steps if there are any project changes, whether they're project scope changes or requirements or money or anything like that. You can use and follow these 8 easy steps to ensure that you're capturing all of the changes, all the document information, and then proceed with the decisions and where to go next. So I'm going to take you through these easy 8 steps, and hopefully by the end of this podcast that you would adopt this, or not even adopt it. You may adopt the 8 changes and add some additional ones to your project, because I always say every project is different, every company is different, so you may have to add or take away, but that's gonna be up to you and your project and your project team. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you're dealing with scope changes is acknowledge and document the change. Now, I said acknowledge the change, but sometimes project managers or leaders could be in a meeting and everyone's talking and about the project, and someone may say, hey, this website, for example, this website background don't look right. I know we said we wanted a blue background, but after seeing it, we don't really like it, and we was wondering if you can, instead of the blue, can you change it to white? Now, you may say, oh, that's just an easy change. We can do that. But if you look at it, look at the requirements, look at the scope document, that is actually a change, because the scope document may say, which was agreed upon at the beginning of the project, the background needed to be blue, not white. Okay? So when you take a look at that, that is a change to a project. Even though you may think it's a small change, it is a change. And you need to be able to call that out and say, okay, this is a change to the requirements, and explain to them again what the steps are to dealing with scope changes. So I'll take you through the 8 easy steps, but I just want to make sure you understand that the slightest change to a project is a change, even though you can easily just turn over a blue background to a white background on the website. But again, your requirements set a blue background. Okay, so again, that is the change. So you need to acknowledge the change that is occurring, that whoever is on that meeting is requesting. Now, for me as a project manager, I always bring my scope documents, or what I like to call the requirement matrix document, with me, that shows all of the requirements of the project when I'm coming into these meetings, because I need to understand, as people are talking, that they are talking about the requirements or the scopes of the project that we've already agreed to. So again, if you take the example of I just said, the website background should have been blue, and now they want it white. Well, I can look at my requirements matrix document I have and say, this was, the scope says blue, and you want to change it to a white. That's a change to a document. So don't be afraid to, as project manager or project leader, to acknowledge that they're asking for a change to the project. And then after you acknowledge it, you need to make sure that you document the change. Document who is requesting the change as well, okay? So get as much information as you need to make sure you understand what the change is all about. Now, for example, I just told you about a simple change, but there could be some major changes that they're asking for. And if you don't understand and acknowledge the change and then document the change that they're asking for, you're probably going to be lost. Okay? So again, acknowledge and document the change. The second step is cross-reference the new change back to the original scope or requirements. What I had just mentioned, as a project manager, I always bring my scope documents and my requirement documents to every meeting because I want to know and listen to if there's any changes to the scope or requirements. And that way I can reference back to the requirement, the original requirement. So for instance, going back to my original example, the website was supposed to be blue in the background and now it's white. Well, I can look at my scope document or my requirement document and say, okay, original was blue, now they want a white background for that change. So again, acknowledge and document the change. The second step is cross-reference the new change back to the original scope or requirements. Now also, sometimes you won't be able to go back and reference the original scope because this might be a new added scope to the project as well. So it's not just, reference back to the original scope. Sometimes it might be a new change or a new addition to the scope as well. So there's about 2 scenarios you can do in step number 2. New change, which is just an addition to the scope of work and requirements, or changing of the original scope or requirements. Okay, step number 3. After you understand what the change is, you need to understand how the change affects the project. And when I say how the change affects the project is it going to add cost to my project? Is it going to add additional time to my project? Am I going to have to bring in additional stakeholders to my project and bring them in because now that change affects, additional stakeholders in the company? Am I going to have to add additional resources for this change? Or am I going, you can add additional staff if you have it in-house, or am I going to have to go outside and hire a consultant to do this particular change? Okay, how this is going to affect my quality on my project. Procurement is really about, am I going to have to order additional material? Am I going to hire additional vendors or additional consultants? What are the risks? Does this change going to add additional risk to my project, which also risk can come along with additional costs? So now not only are you have additional risk, now you have additional costs. And then how is it going to affect my communication on my project? So in order to understand the change that one is requesting, you need to understand how the change is going to affect the project, and you need to document all of this information so hey, for example, let's go back to my example of changing the background from a blue background to a white background. Well, are there going to be any costs? So let's just say it's going to cost, I don't know, additional $500. Okay, let's say it's going to add additional 5 days to my project, right? So let's just say there's not going to be any additional stakeholders that I need to bring in. Let's just say for the resources, originally, maybe I hired out, maybe I brought a consultant in. Now I got to go reach out to that consultant that did the work and bring that consultant back in, right? Additional cost. Maybe there's no effect on the quality. Let's say for procurement, you're going to bring in that additional consultant to come back in to do some extra work. Let's just say there's no risk involved. And let's just say now you have to change the communication just so slightly because now you're bringing back that consultant back to do the additional work. So that information that I just talked about all needs to be in the document, and say cost, additional 500, schedule, it's going to add 5 days, additional 5 days to the project, which means I'm going to have to add an additional, let's say 3 days to the end of the project. Maybe it was going to end April 22nd. Now the project is not going to end to like, I don't know, May 7th. Okay, because after you do all the information, put all the information in, and when things can get done, now it's going to add an additional 5 days. So that kind of information you want to document so that everyone understands how the change to the project is going to affect the overall project. Okay, the overall project team. Okay, so make sure you determine how change affects the project based on these different criteria that I have listed here. And then number 4, document information and present all information back to the stakeholders and or decision maker. So I kind of went over that, so 3 and 4 kind of together. You determine how the change affects the project, you document it all, and then you present the information back to the stakeholder or decision maker. Now, I added decision maker because you can have multiple stakeholders, but sometimes there's only one person actually that can make the decision because maybe because of cost, right? They're the only person that can approve any additional cost to the project itself. So it may not even be the stakeholders that make the decision. It may just be that decision maker, and you need to understand who that decision maker is when it comes to added additional cost to the project itself. Okay. So let's look at number 5. After you presented the information, you're going to seek final decision from the stakeholders and our decision maker. So, sometimes you can present the information to them and you get an answer right away. Sometimes you're not going to get an answer right away. Okay, maybe it's going to take you 2 or 3 days for the stakeholders to take a look at it and then get back to you with a decision. And that decision will be yes, move forward. Right? So let's just say, for instance, we can move forward with changing the background of the website from blue to white, right? And let's just say, for instance, it's going to cost what I said, $5,000. So now he's that decision maker, or if it's not a decision maker, the stakeholders are approving additional costs to the project for $1,000. So let's just say, for instance, your project budget was $90,000. Now it's $91,000 total, right? Or the decision maker or the stakeholder can say, nah, you know what? We can't, approve the additional cost right now. So we're going to have to stick to the original scope, which was blue. And no, we do not want to move forward with the change. Okay. And then number 6 is communicate the final decision to the project team. So, first you wanted to communicate to the project team that there is a change that's being considered. And also the project team is going to help you determine how the change is going to affect the project. So you want to seek out the project team feedback on how this is going to work. And then you want to communicate the information to the project team and said, okay, based on this information we gave to the stakeholder decision maker, they decided either to move forward with it or they have decided to not move forward with it, with the decision. Okay. And then number 7, regardless if it's a yes to move forward or a no to not to move forward, you want to update all project documentation. You may have a list somewhere that shows all the project changes that went on with the project, and you may are keeping track of that. So let's just say, for instance, my example. Of moving the website background from the blue to white, let's just say, for instance, that was approved. Okay, so you go to your document and say, okay, yes, that was approved. You may have some other changes that were not approved. So you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all these project changes, whether they're approved or not approved. But if they are approved, then you need to update all the project documentation. So you need to update the communication plan. You need to update the schedule. You need to update the cost, the budget. You may want to update the risks. If there's any risks to based on the changes to the project. Okay, so you want to update all that project documentation and get it out to the project team, and making sure that then you can execute the project plan with the changes. Okay, so you update the documentation, all the project documentation, and then you execute the project plan with the changes. Okay, so those are the 8 simple steps when you're dealing with project changes or scope changes. Or I mean, you can use that simple 8 steps with any changes to your project. And then what I wanted to let you know is that these 8 simple steps is what we call a change management plan. Now, it's part of phase 2 of the project management process, which is called planning. So when you are planning your project, you want to make sure that you have a change management plan that lays out those 8 simple steps of if there's any changes that are presented to the project. Here's how we deal with these changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You kind of lay out the steps so that everybody knows what the process is on implementing changes and getting the changes approved or not approved in the project. So this is extremely important, because if you don't have steps or a change management plan on how you deal with changes in your project, you can extremely be over budget. You may not even get paid for the work that you've done, because there was no approval to even do the change. So now you're left with doing those changes, and you're left with pretty much holding the bag for those changes, right? Not getting paid for the work you've done. So that's why a change management plan is extremely important to have, extremely important to let the project team and everybody on the project team, stakeholders, understand what the process is, get it documented, so that at the end of the day, when it comes to invoicing your clients, you have documentation that yes, it was approved. Here's all the information, who approved it, when it was approved, and when we actually executed the changes. So making sure that you have a change management plan, in developing that change management plan, you can use my 8 steps that I explain. As I said before, projects are different. Every project is different. So you may take those 8 steps, and you may want to add a couple of other steps because of the nature of the project itself. Those steps can be 8, those steps can be 20. It just depends on the project that you're working on, and making sure that you have a plan in place to deal with scope changes or any type of changes that's going on in your project. Well, thank you for joining me in today's Project Management for Entrepreneurs podcast. Today's episode in 8 Easy Steps, How to Conquer Project Scope Changes. I do have a free download if you go to my website, and it talks about what is project management, and it gives you a firm foundation of what project management is, how to take a project, an active project, and move it from a beginning, which is your initiation phase, all the way to closing. Because again, I want to make sure you are successful in your projects, making sure you get the outcomes that you are looking for, and just help educating not just the business owner, but your staff on how to do project management in your business. Now, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me. We can set up a free 30-minute consultation. We can talk about some of your active projects. We can talk about some of the projects or some upcoming projects. I can give you some feedback and some direction on how to handle some of your projects, especially if it's a project you've never done before and you're just looking to get some advice on how to handle it. Please give me a call. Well, again, thank you. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you all in our next episode of Project Management for Entrepreneur Podcast. Thank you all, and have a nice day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Project Management for Entrepreneurs podcast with your host, Saria Gaylord. To learn more about today's episode or previous episodes, visit our website at www.oysllc.com and subscribe to our newsletter today. So let's start, grow, and advance your business through project management to improve your project outcomes.